You ever have one of those moments when you realize the place you thought was home isn't as safe or as fair as you believed? That was me, one Saturday morning, standing in my driveway, polishing the hood of my black Porsche, thinking about absolutely nothing, until my neighbor, the self-appointed queen of our HOA, decided that today was the day she'd finally win whatever weird little war she was fighting against me. Her name's Brenda, but everyone in the neighborhood calls her Board. Brenda, because she acts like the HOA board is the supreme court, and she's the Chief Justice. I'd barely looked up from the wax when my buddy Dan whispered over the fence, "She's blocking the street again." Sure enough, there she was, phone in hand, snapping pictures of my car like she was building a case for the FBI. I should have known that was just the opening move. A few minutes later, she strutted up my gravel path and slapped a paper right onto my front gate, loud enough for the whole cul-de-sac to hear, "This vehicle is not permitted on HOA property." I folded the rag in my hand, tried to keep my voice calm. "Brenda, this isn't HOA property. My driveway is part of my parcel. You can't tell me where to park my own car." She gave me that sneer she always does, the one that says she's already written the ending of the story in her head. "I've called enforcement," she said. "You'll be fined and they'll tow it in an hour." I almost laughed. "Enforcement team?" I asked like we were in a movie. But she just grinned, "You'll find out soon enough," and marched off like she'd just declared martial law. I shook my head, but I'll be honest. A knot settled in my stomach. Brenda was petty, but this felt different. About 20 minutes later, a white pickup with flashing yellow lights rolled up, and out jumped two men in dark tactical vests. One of them had a badge clipped to his chest, too shiny, too new, the kind you buy online. "Sir, we're with HOA police," the taller one said. "We need the keys to your Porsche. It's being impounded for a code violation." I stared at them. "HOA police? That's not a real thing." But the shorter guy chimed in, "Ma'am reported the car stolen. We have authority to seize it." Something in me went cold. Filing a false stolen vehicle report is no joke. Still, I kept my face steady. "You boys carry real badges?" I asked. The tall one flashed his again, quick, hoping I wouldn't look too close. The emblem was crooked. "Definitely fake. Step aside," he ordered. "We're taking it," Brenda shouted from across the street. "Just tow it already!" And crossed her arms like a villain watching her plan unfold. The shorter guy moved toward my Porsche, pulling a Slim Jim from his pocket. And that was it. Enough was enough. I reached into my jacket, flipped open my worn gold badge, and let my voice drop low. "Before you touch that door," I said softly, "you might want to check who you're stealing from." Everything stopped. The two men froze like they'd stepped on ice. Brenda's smirk faltered. "Wait, you're a U.S. Marshal?" The tall one stammered. I cut him off, sharper now. "And you two just tried to seize federal property under a fake stolen car report." Across the street, Brenda's face went pale. And right on cue, the wail of real sirens began echoing down the block. The taller man shoved the Slim Jim back into his vest. "We were just following orders," he muttered. The shorter one looked like he was calculating his odds of making a run for it. "Don't even think about moving," I said. "Not unless you want to add resisting arrest to your list." Brenda suddenly yelled, "This is harassment! I called them because your car is illegal here." Her voice cracked. "Illegal?" I raised an eyebrow. "On my own property? You filed a stolen vehicle report on a car you knew was mine. That's a felony, Brenda." She started babbling something about how the HOA has authority over all vehicles parked outside, but I was done entertaining her fantasy. "HOA doesn't outrank federal law," I said, stepping toward her. "And you're about to learn that the hard way." A sheriff's cruiser screeched to a stop in front of my house. Deputy Lewis, old hunting buddy of mine, stepped out. Brenda jumped in first. "Officer, arrest him. He's threatening us and refusing to move that car. It violates HOA Code 14. Lewis ignored her and looked straight at me. "Marshal Hayes, what's going on?" I nodded toward the two fake cops. "These two tried to impound my Porsche with phony badges and a false stolen car report." Lewis's jaw tightened. "That true?" he asked them, his hand resting on his holster. The tall one raised his hand slightly. "We were just hired by her HOA president to enforce parking regulations. We didn't mean no harm." Brenda's voice trembled. They told me they were licensed officers. I thought I cut her off. You knew exactly what you were doing. You called them to steal my car, Lewis signaled his partner. Cuff them. The sound of handcuffs clicking echoed down the quiet street. Brenda backed up a step. I turned to Lewis. I've got security footage of them on my porch and near the car. Want me to send it to your office? He nodded. Do it. Attempted grand theft auto and impersonating law enforcement. It's going to be a long night for these guys. Brenda's eyes darted around like a trapped animal. You can't arrest me. I didn't touch the car. I stepped closer. You filed the false report. You set this up. That makes you an accomplice. She opened her mouth to argue, but another police SUV rolled up. An officer walked straight to her. Ma'am, we'll need you to come with us for questioning. For the first time since I moved into that neighborhood, Brenda didn't have a single word to say. The next morning, the street was eerily quiet. No Brenda pacing the sidewalk, no nosy neighbors pretending to water their lawns just to spy. But I wasn't fooled. Quiet here never lasts long. I was sipping my coffee on the porch when my phone buzzed. It was Lewis. Hayes, he said, you're gonna want to hear this. We ran the two guys from last night. Both have priors for fraud. One's got a suspended security license. Guess who bailed them out this morning? I didn't even hesitate. Let me guess. The HOA president? There was a pause. Yeah. Name's Richard Van. Showed up with a lawyer before we even finished booking them. Said something about your Porsche violating community harmony. I set my coffee down. Harmony? Sounds more like organized theft. Lewis lowered his voice. Be careful. I think they're trying to push you out. Brenda's just the face they use. Van's pulling the strings. An hour later, my Porsche's alarm went off. I ran outside, heart pounding, but the car was untouched. Sitting on the hood, weighed down by a rock, was a bright yellow envelope. Notice of community violation. Final warning. And under it, scrawled in pen, sell the car or lose the house. I crumpled it in my fist. That evening, as the sun dipped low, I walked over to the HOA office. The glass door was locked, but inside I saw Van hunched over his desk, Brenda sitting across from him. She spotted me and stiffened. Van looked up, smiled, too wide, too smooth, and walked over to the door without unlocking it. Marshal Hayes, he said. You're trespassing. HOA business hours are over. You sent men with fake badges to steal my car, I said. That's not HOA business. That's a crime. He didn't even blink. Those men misunderstood their instructions. We were merely enforcing community code. Brenda muttered something I couldn't hear, but her face said she wanted to be anywhere but there. Sell the Porsche, Hayes, Van said, leaning closer to the glass. You'll save yourself a lot of trouble. I held his gaze. You just threatened a federal officer. I hope you realize what that means. He stepped back, still smiling. We'll see who's really in charge here. Then the blinds snapped shut. That night, my security cameras caught motion by the side gate. A figure taller and broader than Brenda was fumbling with something metallic. I slipped on my jacket, stepped out quietly, staying in the shadows. Step away from the gate, I said, voice steady. He bolted. I chased him through the gravel, and when he stumbled, I tackled him. Drop the crowbar, I growled, pinning his arm behind his back. He froze when he felt my badge press against his cheek. My neighbor Pete poked his head out, baseball bat in hand. Need help? He called. Got it handled, I replied, hauling the guy to his feet. His ski mask had slipped, scar on his jaw, someone I'd never seen before. Deputies arrived, found wire cutters and a GPS phone with the HOA office address saved. Lewis just shook his head. This is getting deeper. A day later, that man cracked. He admitted Van had hired him to plant contraband in my garage, something they could discover later and use to get me arrested, force me to sell. With that confession, the sheriff's office got a warrant. What they found inside the HOA office blew the lid off everything. Files, fake citations, plans to seize properties, even drafts of fraudulent code violations. Brenda folded fast. She traded her testimony for leniency and confessed to everything. The fake cops, the false report, the threat note. It was all part of Van's plan. And just like that, Richard Van, the man who strutted around giving orders like he owned the block, was led away in handcuffs while reporters shouted questions he refused to answer. Lewis clapped me on the shoulder. "You just saved this whole neighborhood from a real crook." I looked at my Porsche, gleaming under the morning sun. "All I wanted was to be left alone on my own land," I said. He laughed. "Guess they picked the wrong guy to mess with." For the first time since I moved here, the street was quiet. Truly quiet. I locked the gate, patted the hood of my Porsche, and thought about how close I'd come to losing it all. I didn't fight for the law just to let someone take my home or my car. But as peaceful as it felt, I couldn't shake one question from my mind. How many people don't have a badge, or the training, or the evidence to fight back when someone like Van decides they want what's theirs? Maybe that's why I'm telling you this story, because justice had its day here. But I know not everyone gets that lucky. So tell me, what would you have done? Should Brenda face the same charges as Van? Or was she just another pawn? Should HOA boards even have this much power over private property? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear where you stand on where community rules end and personal rights begin.